Hey everyone, let me let everyone into the Zoom. My name is Sheila Donahue. I'm founder of Vero, and we go around the world seeking delicious, sustainably made wines and olive oils from small producers around the world, and we sell them to businesses and consumers across the US. Our website is verovinogusto.com. And our company is all about discovery. And today we're going to explore Abruzzo. And Abruzzo is a region personally that I hold very dear. If you subscribe to our blog, I just wrote an article over the weekend about Abruzzo, and I'm actually Irish American. I'm not Italian, but I realized how the reason why I'm so fond of Abruzzo, and it's because there's a lot of parallels to Ireland. So there's the sea, there's the land, and it's a land of a lot of immigrants, but also a land of a lot of passionate people. So we have with us here today, Davide and Laura Febo, who make natural wines and olive oil in Abruzzo. And we have also with us Mary Beth Vieira, who is I must say, a fantastic wine. I call her a wine teacher. I like wine teacher better than wine educator. Yeah, she's going to lead us through this exploration today and wine tasting. And if you happen to have their olive oil, which I do, we'll taste some of the olive oil too. So we want to make this interactive. If you have any questions, feel free to speak up or write it in the chat. I'll be monitoring on Zoom, and Claire, my colleague, will be monitoring on Facebook for those of you watching on Facebook. So I will turn it over to Mary Beth.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody that's on the Zoom and everybody that is coming in via Facebook Live. And hello, Davide and Laura. So good to see you again. So we're gonna begin by I'm gonna give you a little bit of an overview of Abruzzo, just carrying on where Sheila left off, and then we'll shortly start chatting with Davide and Laura. So I'm gonna share my screen, a few slides, so you can see some pictures and a map to where we are and where Laura and Davide are today. So here we are, Laura and Davide from Febo in Abruzzo, Febo Wines, and look at how beautiful those award-winning designed labels are. We're going to talk about that as well today. Here's some images of Abruzzo. As Sheila was telling you, we have the sea right next to the mountains and these quiet villages stacked and on the rolling hills. So it's these central Apennines we're going to see on a map. You can see right there in the background, so close to the sea itself. So everything in Abruzzo is about these mountains because it's 65% mountainous and like 35% rolling hills. And so you can see on the bottom right picture there, how those vineyards are just tucked up all the way towards the mountains. And here's another picture where we can see the swoop of the sea. This is a little bit south of Pescara, which is going to be where Davide and Laura are coming to you from, near Pescara. And this is a traditional, it's called a trabocco, if you can see on the very large picture on the left. Lining the coast are these traditional like fishing piers, and they're called trabocchi is the plural for that. And again, taking a look at the port right there, that's Pescara. And there's the active port, and right there you can see the line of the mountains leading to the Gran Sasso. So where are we in Italy? If you're taking a look at, get yourself oriented to the regions of Italy, we are right there in the circle in Abruzzo. So this is, some people consider it central, some people consider it the beginning of the south, but it's directly across from Lazio, just south of the Marche. And you're going to see that Abruzzo and the Marche share a lot of grapes and similar styles of wine. I loved this image of this artistic image of a relief map of Italy. I think it's good for us always to remember that Italy is mostly mountains. So the Alps across the north, creating that big wall that protects the valley, the Po Valley of the Emilia-Romagna and Piemonte. And then down the center is this long spine of the Apennines. So where are we? Take a look at that. There are mountains and rolling hills that basically go all the way to the coast. And that is the growing region for Abruzzo, is really mainly in the moderate mountains and the rolling foothills down to the coast. Here's one more view. So you can just see in general, this is central Italy map. You can see Lazio down on the southwest. You can see Toscana up on the northwest, the Marche, but we're in Abruzzo. And take a look there, Pescara along the coast. We're going to be near Pescara. We're going to give you a map that's a little bit clearer of where we are. Some of the indigenous grapes, the native grapes of Italy, are the grapes that the Febo family, Davide and Laura, are growing for us and making the wines that we're going to taste today. So Montepulciano, the big red historic grape. We're going to taste two styles of wine from Montepulciano today. Trebbiano Abruzzese on the left is going to be in the first white wine that we taste today, and pecorino. And if you take a look at this, this is a growing map. That whole area is Abruzzo wine growing region. Everything that's in gray is going to be more mountainous. Everything that is in green would be the DOC zones for Montepulciano di Abruzzo, DOC, Cerzuolo di Abruzzo, DOC, and Trebbiano di Abruzzo, DOC. So if you're studying those things, that's the growing region where all of those grapes can be allowed to be made in those wines. And one more picture. This is a relief map now zoomed in so you can see where the mountains are, where you can see the Gran Sasso d'Italia. These are the biggest mountains near L'Aquila, but we are over near Pescara and near Chieti. And here's just one more. Take a look at where Rome is. And you know, Pescara and Spoltore, where Laura and Davide are very, very near, almost directly across from each other. And let's see where Davide and Laura are coming to us from now, in Spoltore. So there's a small, beautiful village in Spoltore, and that's where that's where their winery is, and that's where one of their main vineyards is, and the first vineyards that were planted to the Febo family. And they also have vineyards that we're going to be discussing in Chieti. So that's your orientation. Spoltore is about 6 to 7 kilometers from the sea, and Chieti is about 20 kilometers from the sea. But we're going to see, we're going to learn today what some of the differences are, but what some of the similarities are, that they both still get, even though it's 20 kilometers away, they're in rolling foothills, and Chieti also gets that sea influence. And here is where they're coming to you from. This is the Spoltore vineyard. There's Spoltore Febo vineyard in the foreground. And this is the town of the village of Spoltore that's overlooking their vineyards and where they're coming to us live from Italy right now. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and say hello, Davide and Laura.
Hi, bye.
Hi.
Is there anything that you'd like to correct or add to what I've said just so far in the orientation, or any questions from anybody online about where we are or anything like that?
Se vogliamo aggiungere,
Sì.
ma hai detto le cose principali, quindi siamo a 7-8 chilometri dal mare, sentiamo l'influsso del mare, sia a Spoltore che a Chieti, diciamo, quindi a Spoltore forse in maniera un po' più importante. Siamo protetti dal Gran Sasso, che è la montagna più alta d'Abruzzo. Al di là del Gran Sasso il clima è totalmente diverso, all'Aquila fa molto più freddo, Ci sono vini che hanno caratteristiche totalmente diverse, quindi anche il Gran Sasso svolge una funzione importante. Noi siamo in mezzo tra il mare e la montagna.
Okay, so what Davide is telling us is that when I was showing you the Gran Sasso, which is near L'Aquila, that's a huge mountain, and wines that are grown up there are much, much colder. I mean, there's snow that falls there. It's a very different climate than down by the sea. But they're not down at the lowest level by the sea. They're between the two. So there's a protection from winds from the north by the Gran Sasso that keep their area warm. The lower elevation is warmer, but still there's this height and there's going to be sea breezes there so that you get that diurnal shift. Quello abbastanza bene? Cosa
Sì,
hai
sì,
detto?
sì.
Okay, va benissimo. Any questions so far just about location or anything like that before I ask them the first questions?
I was just going to suggest, Davide, if you can, ti sposti un po' perché non ci vediamo molto bene.
There.
Okay.
Ah, meglio. That's good. Better. All right. Thank you, Sheila. You're not that shy. Okay. So what I think is really interesting here, you know, on the label of your wines, we here call you Febo. So that's the wines that's the name that we like to use for you. It's very, you know, close to us. Febo, you know, very familiar. But on your wine label, it says Familia Febo. You are a family of Febos that have been on this land farming since at least the year 1560. And you are the first generation to actually bottle and sell wine commercially in bottles. Your grandfather, il nonno Roland, was the first to sell wine in bulk. But your family has been producing olive oil, has been farming one way or another, whether it was cows and pasture land or grapes, and making wine for the family, for the neighbors since 1560. How does it feel? I'm going to ask you some more details, but how does it feel to be 400 years, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 600 years, 400 years? How many hundreds of years is that on the same property and being the farmers that are now taking over this name and this land as farmers and winemakers? Come vi sente? È un grande
onore. It's an honor for us to celebrate our family through our wines. And
Vabbè, sicuramente è un grande orgoglio. Viviamo quotidianamente questa storia, quindi
soprattutto portarla fuori dall'Italia.
Conoscere sì, al di fuori dei nostri territori, quindi pensare di farli assaggiare a chi è più lontano, insomma. Ogni tanto ci mettiamo a pensare, a riflettere, ma chissà che cosa direbbe Roland. Loro avevano una visione un po' più casereccia, casalinga, non avrebbero mai immaginato, ecco, magari lo speravano, ma forse non arrivavano neanche a rifletterci su, ecco, quindi...
Okay, well, they're both saying how what an honor it is, and you heard that in English, and yes, Davide agreed, and how proud they are to carry on the name and carry on the heritage. And he said that sometimes they step back and reflect on how amazing this is, because their family always made things more, you know, the wine was made until their grandfather just for the locals, more like a farmer, for the family, for the neighbors, for the people working on the land, you know, maybe in trade, maybe just selling locally. And they are now, their grandfather, Roland, was the first to sell wine commercially, but in bulk up into the north. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But they're the first ones bottling it and now introducing their land and their family's heritage through the grapes into the world. So sometimes they step back and go, wow, we're really doing this. And my grandfather may not have ever dreamed, it may have been something they dreamed in fantasy, but they would be so surprised, their grandfather and great grandfather, that this was really happening. So beautiful. Well, tell us a little bit about, I think the story of modern winemaking, or almost modern winemaking, really starts with your grandfather, Il Nonno Roland, in the 1960s, when he planted the first Montepulciano grapes in your vineyards, and then slowly but surely made wine to actually make money off of and to sell and to take north. Tell us a little bit about some of the fun stories about how your grandfather's vision and those tanks began, and then later I'll ask you about how you began and how you are looking to the future. So tell us a little bit of story. I heard these stories last week when we met, and I think that they're really beautiful. So tell us a little bit, and then I will fill in the blanks. E si può dire in italiano se è più facile che inglese. Just a little bit e un po' e io posso anche tradurre.
Sì. Metà anni 50, inizio anni 60 decise il nonno, noi siamo agricoltori da sempre, da tante generazioni. Il nonno Rolando è stato importante come figura perché è stato quello che ad un certo punto ha deciso di iniziare a vinificare, quindi a fare vino in maniera un po' più imprenditoriale rispetto agli altri agricoltori della zona e rispetto a chi era venuto prima di lui, che invece vinificava così per la famiglia, per sostentarsi, per lavorare, perché il vino era considerato una bevanda, diciamo, che doveva dare energia perché si zappava con le braccia. E lui ad un certo punto andò nel nord Italia, andò a contrattare delle piccole botti di legno, che purtroppo oggi non ci sono arrivate, e iniziò sotto casa, poi nella stessa cantina dove adesso vinifichiamo, a vinificare la prima vigna di Montepulciano, tutt'oggi in produzione. Ecco, un piccolo fazzoletto di 2000 metri di vigna che stiamo facendo di tutto per cercare di mantenere in vita, per curarla al meglio. Ovviamente ormai le viti hanno una certa età, quindi producono pochissimo, ma è il cuore, quello è stato l'inizio dell'azienda, quindi cerchiamo ogni anno di rinnovare i tralci al meglio per mantenere la produzione.
Okay, let me translate that so far. Un attimo. So he was saying that, yes, in the 1950s, they had grapes there, but his grandfather, Roland, really decided to plant the Montepulciano, which is a native grape there, on just, it was 2,000, 1/5 of an acre, 2,000 meters square. And from just like, it's called un fazzoletto, a little handkerchief size, and then, little teeny square. And then just little by little, they kept expanding until in, mid 1960s, they had 3 hectares. And about that time, his grandfather said, we can make a business out of that. We can make wine and we can sell it in the north because they're buying wine in bulk. So they bought some barrels, and then he spent a lot of time away traveling and selling the wine in the north. And little by little, this became more important part of how their family did business. And before that, really, the wines were about giving energy and giving calories to the locals that were working out in the vineyards. So tell us about, there's a really fun story about, I'm going to show, is this a good time to show the pictures maybe? Or I'll show it in a moment. You have some heritage here, and you've kept some cement tanks that your grandfather used to make wine. And you are still making wine with those traditional cement tanks that he bought in the 1960s. But it really was not just your grandfather that bought these tanks. Tell us the story briefly about how your grandfather acquired these wine tanks that are part of the heritage. And I'm going to show the pictures while we speak.
Sì, comprò queste botti, ma era molto preoccupato sul come pagare quella cifra che era molto importante ai tempi. E ebbe la sorpresa della nonna che gli disse: i soldi li ho io, ed erano i soldi che lei aveva guadagnato al mercato, perché lei si svegliava la mattina e andava a raccogliere la frutta, la verdura e l'andava a vendere al mercato, e quindi nel corso di 5-6 anni aveva accumulato una somma che aveva messo da parte, e quindi gli fece questa grandissima sorpresa. Lui era molto preoccupato e lei gli disse: ho io i soldi per pagare queste botti rosse. Quindi lei è molto affezionata ancora oggi, che ha 93 anni, alle botti.
Lo ripete in continuazione.
Lo ripete, che quelle botti le ha pagate lei, lo dice tuttora.
Okay, molto carino. Okay, I want to explain. So these tanks, what really happened was il nonno, the grandfather Roland, really wanted these tanks, but he was worried. Where is he going to get the money for it? His wife, their nonna, surprised him with the money, because what she had been doing for the previous 6 or 7 years was she was every morning going out and picking. They were growing fruits and vegetables on the property. She'd go pick the fruits and the vegetables, and she would take them into town to the market. And the money that she earned from that, she was secretly stashing away and saving to buy these tanks. So one day, when she had the money accumulated, she came out and she revealed to her husband, their grandfather, I have the money for you to buy the tanks. And he was so relieved, and she was so proud, female power, that she had a hand in this. She wanted to have a hand in this, and she surprised him. And to this day, she's 93 years old, and she still talks about it. They said a lot. She still reminds how proud she was that these were hers, and she painted them for him. So lovely stories. So with that, because we want to get to the wines, we want to talk about your vineyards, but I think briefly, the story is important that your grandfather was making the wines, selling them in bulk to the north. But you two had other plans. Davide, you became a lawyer. You moved to Bologna. You were there for 4 or 5 years. Laura, you were in publishing. You had a successful career going in Milan. You had moved away. Like a lot of people leave the South and they move to the North for their careers.
Yes.
And then my understanding is you continued to enjoy wine and maybe got a little bit homesick. And at some point, you decided to take over the winery. What changed? What made this dream? Because what I don't think I've mentioned yet is their first bottling is in 2018. Laura and Davide are farming organically. They use natural yeast, spontaneous fermentation. This is part of their heart, is really showcasing how to produce wines that are a clear expression of their land and on their vineyards. That's today. But what sparked you to say, we're going to return? And as brother and sister, separate careers. Bye.
Sì, la lontananza da casa, soprattutto il vivere in delle città molto affollate, molto caotiche, dove c'è tanto traffico, soprattutto parlo per Milano, e anche una mancanza di autenticità a volte, di di vita semplice, di natura, anche perché manca la natura, manca, come dire, sono tutti come in una sorta di ipnosi, che corrono tutto il giorno e nessuno si ferma a guardare un albero.
Avevamo bisogno di genuinità, forse,
Mhm.
ma sicuramente ad un certo punto la terra ci ha richiamato a casa. Ci siamo poi pian piano avvicinati al mondo del vino e abbiamo poi unito ci siamo resi conto che anche noi avevamo la possibilità di raccontare la nostra, avevamo la possibilità di raccontare cosa c'è dietro una bottiglia.
Ed è nato il desiderio anche
di esprimerci in questo modo.
Di esprimerci e di far conoscere quella bottiglia a tutti, a
Okay.
più persone possibili.
So what they're saying is that, you know, part of it was just that living with the in crowded cities, the chaos, and really just missing the land, missing home. So that missing was happening, and they were realizing that they really missed that authentic life because they grew up with family Sunday dinners. They grew up, you know, helping on the farm. So this rural lifestyle is in their blood. And then at the same time, they were tasting with their friends beautiful wines from around the world, and then started to realize, wait, we have this land, and we would love to be able to express our land, our heritage, through wines that, hey, we could move home, make those wines, and live on our land a more authentic lifestyle. And here's some pictures here. And I wanted to show you all, these are some pictures of the family. Right there in the middle is Il Nonno, their grandfather Roland, when he was very young in the, this was the 20s, I believe, selling wine up in the north. So it's on one of his sales trips. And that's him on the top right as well. You know, was working the farm as a working farmer. It wasn't only wine. In the 1950s with the sheep, that's right in front of the winery. And on the left, Roland's father, so their bisnonno, that means great grandfather, Francesco Paolo. He actually came before Roland was born. He came to the United States and was looking for a cousin. You know, things were difficult throughout the South. So he lived for a while in the United States, in Pittsburgh in the early 20s, stayed there for a few years here in the United States, and then moved back when Roland was born in the 1920s. And then on the bottom right, kind of more to the story, this whole Febo family was settled around Spoltore, but their mother's side of the family or grandmother's side of the family had another nonno on the right, the bottom right, who was a dairy farmer near Chieti. So both sides of the, and he eventually left dairy farming much older in life, and he started growing grapes as well. So this, both sides of the family returned to the earth, returned to the land. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can all see each other. Are there, before we start talking about, you know, viticulture and winemaking and tasting the wines, are there any questions from anybody? We would love to hear your voices, see your faces, anything in the chat?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to say, okay, we're going to start tasting in a moment, but if you're tasting along with us, the first wine that we're going to taste is La Parella, and you could pour it now, even before we introduce it. But what would be ideal is if you had 2 glasses. We're going to taste 4 wines. So if you have 4 glasses, great. But if you had 2 glasses, our second wine we're going to taste is Il Roland. And this one can benefit from a little bit of air. And I meant to tell you at the very beginning, and I apologize, Davide, ho dimenticato dire di versare questo all'inizio.
Ok.
So this one, he will explain when we start talking about this wine, why it needs a little bit of air. So you might just pour a little bit of this one, set it aside. And as we're talking about the land and we introduced the wines, you could pour La Parella also. So Davide, maybe. Tell us, we saw a photo. So we're going to pour this one. So we're going to get to the wine in a minute, but tell us, Davide, you have 2 vineyards and we showed a picture. We have the one in Spoltore and we have the one in Chieti. They are very different personalities, as you were telling me. There's some similarities between these 2, but the Chieti not only is a little bit closer to the sea, but it has hard clay soils and it faces north. So as we know, facing north, it's going to be cooler. Whereas Chieti has sandy soils, is actually more fertile, and it's facing south and west. So Davide was starting to tell me last week when we spoke that these 2 vineyards have really different personalities. Tell us about the difference and how you work between the 2.
Ok.
È meglio che dico in italiano o ha capito abbastanza?
Sì,
no,
sì,
ho
sì, no, no, ho capito.
Sì. Sono dei luoghi che hanno un'anima totalmente diversa tra di loro, quindi Chieti, terreno molto sabbioso, molto fertile, molto diciamo produttivo, ha una gran forza, e quindi ci siamo resi conto che dà poi dei vini più godibili, insomma, più godibili nell'immediato, ok? Nonostante comunque non sia molto vicino al mare, ha un finale, i vini hanno un finale pulito, sapido, minerale. Per quanto riguarda Spoltore, ecco, qui si può fare l'esempio perché il Parella viene quasi tutto da Chieti e Roland invece è un'espressione di Spoltore. Come è possibile vedere sono vini totalmente diversi tra di loro. Ovviamente il vitigno è diverso, ma è diversa l'esposizione, è diverso il terreno, è diverso anche il modo di allevamento della vigna, perché Parella è una pergola abruzzese che ha circa 30 più anni, 33 anni, 34 anni. Roland invece è giovane, quindi ha ancora bisogno di...
Well, I'm sorry, un attimo, quale è più giovane?
Roland.
Ok, va bene. Roland
Okay.
di
Spoltore. Sì, il colore è dovuto anche molto al fatto che la 2020 è stata un'annata molto calda, molto assolata, quindi i grappoli hanno preso tanto sole e nel Roland si vede tutto. Si vede anche perché è un filare, un guyot, quindi ovviamente il sole va a picchiare più forte sul grappolo. Nel Parella invece, nella pergola abruzzese, riusciamo a gestirlo un po' più facilmente, quindi a coprire un po' di più con la foglia e a proteggere dal sole.
Ok.
In ogni caso comunque sono vitigni molto molto diversi, quindi il Trebbiano ha un'identità, il pecorino è tutt'altro, ecco.
Okay, so he's really saying the souls of these 2 vineyards are very different. And when we're talking about the white wines, the red wines, the red grapes are grown in both, I believe, we'll confirm that. But the white wines, right now, the Parella, the first one, where most of the Trebbiano, the Parella is where the Trebbiano Abruzzese grapes are grown. That's mostly in the Chieti vineyard. And the Chieti vineyard is the one that is south facing, but sandy soils. So the wines that come off of there are immediately riper, richer, think south facing, this riper, richer, and a little bit more immediately approachable. They don't take as much time to come around. So you're going to enjoy it right away because of that ripeness and richness. Sorry, I keep getting scam phone calls and I didn't turn off my sound. It says scam likely. And so we're going to taste that one first. And then the Spoltore vineyard, the one that has that harder clay soil, which we know is usually a cooler soil, faces north, much, much cooler. Those are also younger vines. Okay. And so that's those vines take a little bit longer. Those grapes take a little bit longer. And that's where right now the Il Roland is the pecorino grape. Right now is mostly in this second wine that is from the Spoltore vineyard that is facing north. But we're finding, and I find it interesting that the Chieti vineyard, Davide, that is kind of that more immediate. It has the older vines and it has the sand, but it's also seems to have the more minerality. Is it from the older vines, do you think? Because that's one thing. He said there's just more of a minerality and a savoriness that comes out of the Chieti vineyard. Do you think it's from the sand, or do you think it's from the, that one is another difference is the Chieti vineyard is the Pergola Abruzzese. I'm going to show you a picture of that. The vines are grown up high as a pergola, whereas the in the Spoltore vineyard, the part that has the pecorino is grown guyot. And so those they actually see more sun rather than been covered and shaded.
La differenza.
Sì.
Cosa pensa la sapidità della...
La sapidità, scusami, la sapidità viene sicuramente dal terreno più che dalla tipologia di allevamento. Sicuramente la tipologia di allevamento va ad influire molto. In Abruzzo si utilizza la pergola abruzzese. Oggi non va molto di moda. C'è un motivo però, se per 50 anni hanno utilizzato tutti la pergola abruzzese. Si riesce a gestire meglio la temperatura. La sapidità è dovuta principalmente al terreno, però, quindi alle componenti del terreno, al fatto che siamo vicini al mare, al fatto che dipende anche poi dall'affinamento in vigna, dall'affinamento in cantina, perdonami. Questi sono vini che hanno fatto principalmente cemento. Come ti dicevo prima, è vero che Chieti dà dei vini un po' più, diciamo, immediati. È anche vero però che il Trebbiano ha bisogno di più tempo di affinamento in bottiglia. Quindi la sapidità è data da più fattori, sicuramente dal terreno, dall'annata, ma anche poi dall'affinamento in vasca e soprattutto in bottiglia.
Okay. And he's saying my question is, I actually taste kind of the savoriness in both wines, but Davide is saying it's really noticeable in the wines, that's extra noticeable, and the minerality coming off of Chieti. And when I ask, he says, you know, it's really not so much about the way that the vines are grown, but it really is about the differences in the soil. It's a little bit of everything. It's about being both of them produced in cement tanks, but there's a lot that has to do with the soil. So I think with that, let's taste per prima, vero? Oh, this is, if you haven't seen it, Pergola Abruzzese. This is traditional to Abruzzo. So there's still a lot of vineyards that use this. So they're, you know, high off the ground, there's airflow. The higher elevations you get, you find pergola and higher elevation vineyards to really kind of protect the grapes from sunburn. So that's why it's been used in the past, but less and less wineries are using those, vero?
Sì.
So people are starting to transition to more Guyot. So let's move to the Parella is made with the Trebbiano Abruzzese grape, but there's going to be probably other Trebbiano grapes in there. So this is traditional grape to Abruzzo. So very, very famed grape that is indigenous to Abruzzo. But it's been in the past often confused with a grape called Bombino Bianco that grows here and also grows in Emilia-Romagna, and sometimes confused with Trebbiano Toscano. So throughout, the recent history, they've been interplanted so often that if we are making a Trebbiano d'Abruzzo DOC wine, all three of these grapes, Trebbiano Abruzzese, Bombino Bianco, and Trebbiano Toscano, are accepted in the blend, and they don't have to be called out separately. But Davide tells me that there is definitely a way that he can see that there is a lot of Trebbiano Abruzzese in his vineyard because of the shape of the grape. And they've got a plot that is almost all of that on the Chieti vineyard. So think acidity, white flowers, nectarine, almond, and anise is what this grape gives us. And here's the wine. So Trebbiano d'Abruzzo with asterisk that it can be a combination of grapes, but there's going to be a lot of the Trebbiano d'Abruzzese there, sandy soils from Chieti, southwest facing, spontaneous fermentation, stainless steel 1 year, 12% alcohol. Più o meno è corretto?
Tutto ok.
The question, I'll ask in Italian to Davide. Davide, questo non è fatto con cemento?
Il 2020 sì, lì c'è scritto acciaio.
So
Ho visto questo sul sito internet.
Oh, perché 2018 era acciaio, ok? Noi in cantina abbiamo acciaio e cemento. Vabbè, è un semplice, è un refuso. Il 2020 ha fatto fermentazione e affinamento in cemento, sì.
Ok, so, ecco.
Ok.
Yeah, from what Davide explained to me, this was when we were importing it a year ago, is that he, like as he said, his first releases were in stainless steel, but we imported in there 2020, and what he was doing, he was refurbishing those old cement vessels that his nonna had purchased. So once he finished refurbishing them, then he's been able to make all of his wines in cement. Giusto, tutti I vini oggi sono fatti in cemento, giusto?
Sì.
Yeah, so all his wines are now made with
Oh, great. Thank you. And that's the year that I have in front of me is the 2020. So for those of you who have this wine at home, let's taste. I'm getting white flowers and kind of lemon peel, citrus, and some herbs, green herbs. Oh, wow. This wine, for those of you who don't have it, wow. There's so much energy. There's this core of fruit and acidity. And I'm tasting kind of like a lemon or a grapefruit, but there's a lot of herbaceousness in this. I'm getting kind of a little bit of rosemary and thyme. That's kind of a little bit of a savory quality going with this juicy, like lemonade, grapefruit flavors. It's wonderful.
Ha conservato una bella acidità.
Mm-hmm.
Ha una bella struttura, continua ad essere un vino che avrà ancora una bella vita in bottiglia.
I agree. He's saying that there's structure and there's complexity. You can feel it. You can feel the structure on the palate. I can feel a phenolic richness, a little bit of a grip. And then he's saying that this is going to last in the bottle. This is going to evolve. I agree, because you can feel the structure and it's alive with acidity. So it's very, very lively on the palate. And there's this freshness on the nose, very fresh on the nose, a little bit almost even going towards, minty, with those wild herbs. Tell me more. What do you like about this wine?
Ha una sua tipicità dovuta anche molto alla fermentazione spontanea, quindi il fatto che comunque sia andato in fermentazione spontaneamente, senza fare piede cube, significa che poi ovviamente ha una sua tipicità che ha il trebbiano famiglia Febo, insomma, poi è difficile andare a riscontrare le stesse caratteristiche gusto-olfattive in altri trebbiani, proprio perché fermenta con quei lieviti in quelle vasche. Il cemento sicuramente è importante, perché ci siamo resi conto senza il controllo di temperatura che la temperatura rimane abbastanza bassa, quindi la fermentazione scorre via liscia, tranquilla, può durare anche 15 giorni e i sentori primari scoppiano, insomma, sono sicuramente un lato positivo, ecco.
Yes. And I remember, so to tell you what he said, and then it reminded me of something else he told me the other day. There's a typicity to not only the grape for the region, but there is a typicity to their land, to their winery, to their family, Febo, because this is spontaneous fermentation. So it is the natural yeast that is in the vineyard and is in the winery. So you're not going to get this exact flavor or complexity from another nearby winery because it is theirs. And then with using the cement is important because it holds that temperature, that holds that cold, low temperature that allows for a super slow fermentation. And I remember Davide telling me the other day that kind of everything about this wine is slow. So it's slow to ripen in the vineyard, but they allow a slow, long fermentation up to 15 days, maybe more, to slowly ferment, to come around and have its character. And that coolness, is welcomed in the mouth with just an explosion of flavors, an explosion of acidity. I can still taste it. There's still this persistenza di gusto. So there's this persistent flavor and acidity that's there. It's wonderful. Tell us what, is anybody out there want to make any comments on the wine if you're tasting it? Is there any comments? Sheila?
I just want to make one comment. And so two months ago, we did a Vero talk with another winery whose wines we import. And it's La Maliosa in Maremma, Tuscany. And they also make natural wine. And when we were tasting her wines, Antonella Manuli is the winery owner. She was commenting a lot on herbs, so smelling herbs and actually like tasting herbs. And I'm wondering, based upon not only your own tasting notes and the comment that Davide made about spontaneous fermentation, that if that is a common thing you find in natural wines. I know we have some people who are participating, like Jenny, that are focused on natural wine. So it would be kind of fun maybe to get your other people's kind of observations about this. I don't know if you, Mary Beth, for example, have an observation.
I think that the herbaceousness can come from many inputs, and I wouldn't necessarily put it with natural, other than I think natural wines share with organic wines, share with wines that aren't overripe, the ability to showcase without all kinds of ripeness and richness, to showcase all the layers of savory qualities, mineral qualities, and herbs. And guess what? I have wine delivered to my door that I have to sign for. I'll be right back.
Okay. So Davide and Laura, you have a holiday tomorrow, right?
Oh, thank you so much.
Sei festa domani in Italia.
Sì, sì,
Mm.
sì, sì, sì,
Ah,
sì, sì.
yes, yeah, è festa.
La festa
Yeah,
della
yeah.
Repubblica, sì.
Yeah, we just
Proveremo
had
a
a holiday here on Monday. Abbiamo appena festeggiato lunedì, Memorial Day, che è una festa per iniziare l'estate.
Wow.
Okay, va bene. Andiamo al prossima. Let's go to the next wine. Are we ready?
Ok.
Okay. So I already poured mine. And so we're going to Il Roland, which is a white blend, but this one is, instead of Trebbiano, it's 100% with pecorino. So I'm just going to show you that slide very quickly. And actually, I'm going to go back for a second and show you pecorino. It's a grape that was saved from extinction in the 1980s, so it was almost disappeared. And but there's been a recent increase in plantings because of popularity, especially started with the sommelier world rediscovering these wines. And these grapes were discovered in the Marche, and it's kind of up in the air whether it's traditional to the Marche or Abruzzo. But it's grown a lot in Abruzzo as well. Naturally high in sugar, high in acid. It has an herbal citrus character with minerality, but you can also get floral and anise and licorice and tropical flavors with this wine, with this grape. So that's the grape that goes into Il Roland, named after Il Nonno. So this one again is in Spoltore. It's got the calcareous clay soil, really hard soil, north facing. The grape pecorino, 13.5% alcohol. And let's taste. And then at the same time, Davide, tell us a little bit about this wine.
Ok.
I get a savory quality off of this one on the nose. It immediately comes out. There's a little bit of an earthiness, kind of a almost like it reminds me of a orange peel or an orange kind of like when you put it you slightly burn an orange peel, you just warm it a little bit, so it's like a warm orange peel that you'd put in a cocktail on the nose. And there's definitely a licorice anise aroma. I haven't put it in the boca yet. Now this one, I'm getting kind of this, I'm getting a savory, bitter orange. I'm also getting a kind of a little bit of an earthy quality to it. Almost, and maybe like a little bit of a dried apricot. So it reminds me of albicocca, a little bit of that albicocca con anise, liquirizia. And a little bit of there's a saltiness to this one. I'm getting a kind of salty, savory minerality to this wine. So there's a lot of concentration. It's a little bit richer on the palate. The other one's a little bit livelier. This one's a little bit richer, a little bit rounder.
Qui c'è un terreno veramente molto complesso rispetto ad altri terreni che abbiamo in azienda. Il pecorino lo hanno riscoperto qualche decennio fa e si stava estinguendo, come giusto ho letto nella slide. È totalmente diverso dal Trebbiano. Il Trebbiano stai lì a dire dai, in prevendemmia, magari arriva al momento giusto per raccoglierlo. Il pecorino invece devi fare attenzione perché esplode, ha una forza, vedi che il grado alcolico è più alto, è un concentrato naturale, insomma, quindi per il pecorino bisogna tirare un po' le briglie, fare attenzione, raccogliere al momento giusto. Per il Trebbiano invece stai lì ad accarezzarlo per cercare che diciamo arrivi il suo momento. Poi il Trebbiano continua si esprime molto in bottiglia. Il pecorino invece inizia ad avere una sua forma prima e si esprime in maniera totalmente diversa. E qui la differenza si nota tanto. Ovviamente ci sono dei lati comuni, quindi sapidità, pulizia in bocca, mineralità, ma questo è il territorio, quindi è la matrice comune di tutti i vini. Però poi la differenza dei vitigni ovviamente è netta.
So what he was saying is that the soil and the land where this comes from is very, very complex. And there's kind of a difference here between pecorino, you really have to watch out for. So if going back to the one that we just tried, the Trebbiano d'Abruzzo, it takes its time. And then it's planted in a cooler vineyard. Or I'm sorry, take that back. It just takes its time. It takes its time in the vineyard, it takes its time in the winery, and it takes its time in the bottle, and it takes its time in the glass to open up. So everything about that wine needs time. Pecorino is a very expressive grape, and it ripens quickly. So it has a lot of sugar, and it can ripen to high alcohol quickly. So he says they get nervous because they're watching the temperatures and they're really tasting this grape to make sure that they get the picking and the harvest date right, so that it's not too high of alcohol, so that they harvest it before the acidity drops. So they're trying to pick it early enough and still have that ripeness. So you're going to get the minerality, and that savory notes that I was noting really comes from the soil, and the ripeness and the richness comes from the grape. Più o meno?
Giusto.
Okay. Giusto is a good word. I like giusto. So wonderful. Sheila, you have a little quick story about the naming of this wine, vero?
Yeah. So as I mentioned briefly earlier, it was about a year ago when I was talking with Davide, and he was sending me samples because I was, of course, planning to import his wines. And he said, "Hey, I have this pecorino in a vat. I want you to taste it." So he sent it to me, and I tried it, and I liked it, and I thought it was really interesting for a pecorino. So I said, "Hey, I want to import it in." So he said, "Okay, great." And then all of a sudden, we had to prepare a label for it. So he sends me a label, and the front is like blank. So he can't put the DOC because there wasn't enough time to get the approval for the DOC. And of course, Italy, there's a lot of rules. So they had to come up with the name for the wine. And it was in the morning when we were talking. So he said, "I'm going to talk and meet with my family at lunchtime, and I'll get back to you in the afternoon." And sure enough, that was.
In one day, they picked the name Il Roland. It could have been called Il Nonno, but he's Roland. Tribute to your grandfather. Beautiful.
Ci stava, sì, perché è sotto alla cantina quindi
Il pecorino.
è il pecorino, quindi è proprio la terra
dove lui passava le sue giornate.
Sì.
Okay. So they said it was natural because this is the vineyard, and this block is right in front of the winery where he passed by every day. So it was just natural to name it after him, where he spent all of his time working. Tell us, what would you pair food-wise before we go on to the rosé and the red? What would you pair with the first wine versus the second wine? Would you do something different? How do you like to, what do you like to suggest with those wines?
Sicuramente questo tipo di pecorino può essere abbinato anche ad una carne o ad un primo molto, molto condito, quindi con formaggi o anche a dei formaggi stagionati. Il Trebbiano invece bisogna andarci un po' più cauti, quindi è un po' più da pesce. Gli spaghetti sulle vongole che si mangiano sui trabocchi.
Yes.
Ecco, il pecorino può essere abbinato molto facilmente al brodetto, che è un altro piatto veramente tipico della zona sud di Pescara. Quindi il brodetto è una passata di pomodoro e dentro ci sono tante tipologie diverse di pesce ed è difficilissimo da cucinare perché ogni tipologia di pesce ha il suo tempo di cottura e quindi bisogna essere molto esperti, insomma.
Okay. So he's saying the one that we just drank, the Roland, that had, you know, that ripeness, that savoriness, that weight, that richness, it's already going to say, yes, it may be white, maybe a white wine, but this gold and this richness, that can go right towards meats. So you can serve that with different types of meats, even aged cheeses. And brodetto di pesce, and brodetto is be like a fish stew that's got a tomato base. And, you know, he said, this is not an everyday dish. So it's either long cooking with the family or you get it at a restaurant in Abruzzo because all the different fish and the seafood in there has its own cooking time. So it's, you know, really delicate. The Trebbiano, on the other hand, you know, you're going to go with lighter dishes. You're going to go with fish and, you know, maybe spaghetti with clams that are local, that are fished right off those trabocchi. So,
viene combinato bene anche con i crudi che attualmente qui stanno prendendo piede, quindi i crudi.
Oh yes, raw fish, and raw meats. Yeah, perfect, because we're eating a lot of it.
Sì.
Yeah, I love that idea. Sounds really good. Okay, so let's move to the Cerasuolo di Abruzzo. So I'm going to go back really quickly and just show you, where did I go? Montepulciano is a very traditional, very historic grape. It is native to Abruzzo. And in fact, even though the Marche has some very famous wines made from Montepulciano, that grape, it is native to Abruzzo. In fact, in the Marche, they can't use the name Montepulciano in the name of their wine. That's why you have Conro and Offida are the names of some of their wines once it's DOC or DOCG level. So it's the second most planted variety in Italy. And I bet you guys can guess red. Actually, of all varieties, I bet you can guess what the most planted variety is. It's a red. It's famous in Tuscany. That's Sangiovese is number one. But number two is Montepulciano. And 56% of Abruzzo vineyards are planted to Montepulciano. So a very important grape here. It's not related, most of you probably know, but just a reminder, it's not related to the wine Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, because Vino Nobile di Montepulciano is the name of a wine from Tuscany, from a town called Montepulciano. And that's made with Sangiovese. Not the same thing. We're talking about the Montepulciano grape. It's a lot about the skins here. It's high in anthocyanin, so high color. It can give a lot of color to the red wines, high tannins, medium plus to high acidity, full body. It can have a lot of high alcohol. Think flavors of red cherry, plum, and herbs. And some interesting things about this grape that growers need to pay attention to is it needs long, slow growing. So nothing too hot to get those grapes and those pips fully ripe. Because if they're not fully ripe, it can maintain a little bit of green notes. And some of us like the green notes. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And there's styles that can go from easy drinking, light and fruity to concentrated, complex, structured wines. So keeping in mind the deep color and the tannins, we're going to drink and we're going to taste the rosé first. And Davide is going to tell us about the rosé, but here in Abruzzo, when a rosé is made from the Montepulciano grape, it's called Cerasuolo. And Cerasuolo, the name comes from Cerasa, which is local dialect for something that's cherry-like. So think of the color and the flavor. And even though it's a rosato, because it's from Montepulciano, it's going to be a little bit darker and more savory than you might be used to with, those light French rosés. So I'm going to pour it. So this is the wine label. It's so pretty. Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo, and this is a DOC, the DOC on the label, and look at this color. Do you see that color pouring in the glass? It's hard to see how pretty that color is. It's very rosy and it's very cherry-like. So it's almost like a very light red. So tell us what you do for this wine, Davide.
Viene raccolto, anche lui viene separato, tolti i raspi, separato dalle bucce nel giro di qualche ora, avviato poi alla fermentazione in cemento anche lui. La caratteristica è proprio che viene separato dalle bucce immediatamente, nonostante questo comunque accumula così tanto colore, ma questa è la forza del Montepulciano e la sua anima, insomma, è una delle sue caratteristiche più importanti. Ovviamente bisogna diciamo, raccogliere nel periodo giusto, quindi mantenere un'acidità giusta, importante, perché poi dovrà mantenere la struttura, la sostanza del vino. Io credo che il cerasuolo fatto in questo modo sia una delle espressioni più veritiere nella nostra zona, ecco.
E più cosa?
Più reali, più genuine, autentiche.
Una rappresentazione
autentica
del vino.
Perché molti tendono a chiarificarli e quindi diventa un colore rosa pallido.
Buccia di cipolla, si dice. Però
sono chiarificati.
Noi lavoriamo non interveniamo sul vino, quindi rispettiamo l'annata, rispettiamo il territorio e rispettiamo ancora di più il tipo di uva. E il tipo di uva si esprime in questo modo. Tantissimi mi chiedono, Dio, ma quanti giorni sta sulle bucce? E in realtà il Montepulciano si esprime in questo modo, soprattutto a spoltore, quindi spoltore riesce ad accumulare ancora più colore. Ovviamente poi questo dipende molto dalle annate, non tutte le annate sono così tanto colorate, la 2019 era più chiara, dipende dall'annata, dipende dal caldo.
Ok, cerco di spiegare. First of all, this wine, they make very simply, very naturally, a lot of hands off. When the Montepulciano grapes come in for the cerasuolo, they destem it immediately, and just that little bit of breakage, they leave. Ma quanti giorni sulla buccia o ore?
O
qualche ora sì, ma
qualche
motivi
ora?
tecnici
2 ore.
2-3 ore per motivi tecnici.
This is only 2 hours maceration. Only 2 hours. So he gets asked all the time when he's going around tasting, well, how many days did you have it on there? 2 hours? Because just that little bit of skin breakage, it's from that Montepulciano grape that has so much color, gives that much color to the vine, to the wine. And they, he pays really close attention to picking at the right time, because you want to make sure that you pick it with a bright acidity, because you want to have that acidity in the wine. And they're telling us that Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo is really the wine of the land, the authentic wine of their area. So it's something that everybody drinks. It's the common wine that everybody makes, and so everybody tries each other's wines. It's something that they're really proud of. And you can drink this from anything from the lightest appetizers into mains, and think of those pizzas, and think of those the sausages and the salumi, primi pasta with this wine. Vero?
È un vino molto versatile.
Sì, quello che hai detto.
può essere abbinato un po' a tutto, insomma, dipende ovviamente dai tipi di condimento. Però sì, da un aperitivo a tutto pasto, ma anche alla carne, anche agli arrosticini, insomma.
Anche alla
Also,
pizza.
in which cosa?
Anche,
detto
anche
Laura?
con la pizza.
On la
La
pizza.
pizza.
Yeah, I want this with pizza very much, and I would like it with a roast as well. One of those wines that when I first tasted it and I first discovered it years ago, I just fell in love, because there's this lightness and brightness, but there's still a savory quality, and there's this cherry fruit, and it's like what you want to drink with so many Italian foods, but it doesn't have to be Italian. I mean, I have a friend that lives in Abruzzo. She's a British friend. She's married to an Abruzzese, vicino Aquila. And she always makes me jealous because she shows bottles of this on the table at Pasqua, which is Easter, Mother's Day, because she knows she's going to, bread and butter. Hello. This is just a wonderful, wonderful wine that you can drink with everything. It's got great structure. It's got great acidity, and the fruit in there, it's just a perfect balance of fruit with some herbaceousness going on there. I just love it. And it's really, that flavor is really lasting. So it's a beautiful wine. Any questions from anybody on Facebook or on Zoom?
No, we had someone that had to leave.
Okay.
Helen.
Well, so we don't miss another one. Let's move right on to the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. Okay, so this is going to be the red, and we're going to find out the difference between how you make the two. And I'm going to be curious. I think we're all curious. Is this in complete cement and stainless steel, or is there any wood for this wine? So how do you produce this wine, which is the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo DOC? Nice, dark, beautiful color. I mean, it's almost purple in the glass. There's this a magenta quality, nice depth. Yes, I cannot read through it. I cannot read through it. I can only see on the, it's very, oh. I love that there's flowers and herbs in there, as well as blue fruit. Almost a black cherry and maybe a boysenberry. It's very nice nose. I'm sorry, I have to go faster. I like to just smell for a while. That's me personally. It's like, oh, I really like an aroma. And I'm getting almost a licorice quality in this as well. So a little bit of herbs, licorice, flowers. That is so bright and lively. The acidity in there just sparkles on my palate. So I was expecting it to be much heavier, but there's this lightness. There's kind of a live dancing quality. It's very, very alive. This feels very fresh with acidity and with kind of a bright, the flavors really coming out are kind of like that bright cherry notes with some herbs on it. But the palate really, I saved my taste. I did not taste it before this moment. I wanted to be, but it's very, very lively. It's lovely.
Questo fa una macerazione di una settimana e questo consente di mantenere un equilibrio tra la struttura del Montepulciano, che è imponente, e una leggerezza, una facilità di beva che lo caratterizza. perché il montepulciano rischia di essere pesante a volte, di appesantire, di essere troppo strutturato, troppo forte.
Un po' grezzo, certi dicono, no, il
Yeah.
montepulciano no. Faccio un calice e poi non mi va più. Invece qui abbiamo cercato di esprimere l'eleganza del montepulciano, perché anche il montepulciano può essere un vino elegante, rosso di struttura sicuramente, che riempie la bocca, ma ha un tannino che si sente perché è la sua caratteristica, ma comunque è elegante, non
appesantisce.
Non è un tannino terroso, non è un tannino che stufa dopo un po', ecco.
So what they're doing here is something that you may not expect. So when we're accustomed to drinking Montepulciano, wines from the Montepulciano grape, so often because of the grape, because of the tannins, because of the high alcohol, you can have a really sometimes rough wines, grezzo. The wines can feel rough on the palate and they can feel overly big, overly tannic, overly alcoholic. They don't want that. They want to go for what Montepulciano can be, and it can be elegant. So they're in search of elegance and something more refined. It's 1 week, 1 week of maceration, and they call it quits because they don't want to pull off so much of those tannins that are there and ready to go. So I think that they've really struck that balance. I think you've achieved that elegance and the lightness on the palate, but yet you still feel the tannins there. And there's definitely a savory, herbaceous quality. So that's going to go with all of your savory dishes. I'm the person who I rarely drink wine by itself anyway. I'm always, when I have food, I want wine. When I have wine, I want food. They just go together for me. So I see this with, your bigger pastas and definitely your roasts. This could still go with something as big as game. Because you're adding the, it's like the sauce.
Ma anche con una pasta condita, magari con
Timballo.
Timballo è perfetto, sì, ed è uno dei piatti più conosciuti, più popolari qui da noi in Abruzzo.
The timbale?
Sì, sono delle sfoglie di pasta messe una sopra l'altra e in mezzo c'è il ragù, besciamella. Insomma, è un piatto molto sostanzioso che si mangia generalmente solo durante le feste.
So it's a big bowl of pasta that's baked, something like a lasagna. So there's got bechamel sauce, and there's ragu, there's pasta, there's meat. And so think of that, of how rich and heavy that is. And this is that contrast that kind of marries the flavors, but at the same time, it adds lift on the palate. It cleanses the palate with the acidity and the lightness. Oh, it'd be great. Yeah.
Nello stesso tempo può essere anche utilizzato con cibi un po' più leggeri, diciamo. Questa è un'innovazione per noi. 2 giorni fa andavo in un ristorante e ho visto il nostro montepulciano qui a Pescara, veniva accompagnato con del pesce, quindi è una rivoluzione. Qui in genere nessuno l'avrebbe mai fatto, ecco. Quindi fare una macerazione un po' più breve significa poi in alcuni momenti, cioè in alcuni casi, avere un vino con una beva più interessante, più agile, una beva più agile.
Yeah, he was saying that you don't have to go with the timbale and use it to refresh your palate. You can actually go with much lighter dishes. They were at a restaurant that serves this wine in Pescara, and they were serving it with fish dishes because it really is so flexible, because of the lightness on the palate, that they're doing something pretty unique with this light short maceration and just showing off what Montepulciano can do on the elegant side. So be serving it with, full range of dishes. So I love that. Yeah. I'm going to see how it goes with lamb tonight. I'm going to be having lamb at a friend's house. So I'm going to be taking this along we'll let you know. Goes with lamb too.
What I like about their montepulciano is the texture in your mouth. And it's something, honestly, that I don't get much in montepulciano. And I found, especially living in Italy, that it's easy to get montepulciano, red wines, and it's usually a supermarket type of wine, meaning that it's lower, lower quality. And when I first moved to Italy, I would buy it because I was amazed you can get like wine for like €2 a bottle, but I got tired of it, actually. And so that's what I love about their wine. It's alive and it has character. I don't think you get tired of it.
It has character. That's a good word. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. So I do want to draw attention to these beautiful labels. So these labels not only are beautiful to look at and look at that design, these are phases of the moon that are being highlighted. Phases of the moon, and there's a gabbiano, which is a seagull, and we're going to let Laura tell us about it. But these labels, especially the Parella, won a design award for best, I don't know if it was a silver or gold for label design at Vin Italy, and also won a design award at the San Francisco International Wine Competition. So tell us a little bit about this beautiful design and the inspiration on the bottles for the moon, the design, and the seagulls.
Abbiamo voluto riportare il concetto del naturale e dell'autenticità anche sull'etichetta attraverso queste fasi lunari che mostrano la ciclicità della natura, del cosmo, del tempo anche, e quindi anche del concetto di annate e della loro diversità. Sì, in base anche alla temperatura dell'anno. E poi vabbè, il gabbiano è un po' il simbolo di Pescara perché c'è il mare, quindi è piena sempre di gabbiani che volano nel cielo, e quindi volevamo dare...
Quando piove, che è brutto tempo, si vede dalla cantina, si vede tutto grigio sul mare, ce l'abbiamo proprio di fronte, e qualche volta qualche gabbiano si spinge anche molto vicino a noi, sulla cantina, e quindi è un po' un simbolo ovviamente di Pescara, siamo proprio lì sul mare, quindi ecco il...
So go ahead.
No. Sì, anche della libertà, il gabbiano è un volatile che può arrivare anche ovunque, quindi anche un po' il simbolo di portare questo prodotto anche molto lontano da qui.
Yes. So again, this is the phases of the moon that are being featured, and really it's to express the authenticity, express how the connection of the land to the phases of the moon, to to respect the cosmos, and then the kind of the power and the magic of time, and how each vintage is going to be different, and how the weather and the phases of the moon are going to affect the land and the growing and the wine, the authentic wine that's coming out of there. So that's kind of the phases of the moon, is to honor nature and honor the cosmos. And then the seagull is these, the seagulls are all over Pescara, which is not far from where they are. And they're everywhere there. So it's a symbol, but Davide was even saying that when it's really bad weather down and very, very cold and rainy down on the ocean, they escape and they fly up and they come up toward their vineyard and Spoltore, and they, visit them all the time. So there's kind of the symbol of freedom. And we know that, Davide and Laura have had the freedom to, return home and have these experiments and really paying homage to their past and to the land and to their culture. So congratulations on those 2 awards.
Grazie.
And I want to show one other picture. And Sheila, this is for you to talk about. I'm going to share the screen again. And I don't know if I showed this one, but the montepulciano we just tasted, but we got something else here. So
Yes.
the Febo family is not only making wine, they are
Making olive oil. This is a over 100-year-old tree. Quanti anni ha questo albero, per esempio, Davide?
Questi sono impianti secolari. Sappiamo che nella zona i primi uliveti sono stati piantati nel 1600, nella nostra vallata, quindi anche a Spoltore. Queste sono piante che avranno almeno 300 anni, suppongo. Sono impianti secolari. Pensare che Rolando, il nonno, che teneva tantissimo a ogni suo olivo, quindi avrebbe saputo da lontano, quindi da quando stava a casa, riusciva a descrivere pianta per pianta e lui fin da bambino se li ricorda sempre così. Quindi 90 anni fa, 100 anni fa erano già così. Quindi figuriamoci quanti secoli potrebbero avere.
Yeah, so these olive trees, so as Maribeth said at the beginning, they've had this property since was it 1560, and so these olive trees are very, very old. So Davide thinks they're at least 300 years old, and his grandfather Roland, who we heard a lot before with the wine, he was especially enthusiastic about not only making olive oil, but even he was fond of the trees. So all the trees had a name. I mean, as you can imagine, if each one is 300 years old, that you know, and then it's on your family's property that's been in the family for, you know, for centuries, that it definitely means something. So yeah, so it kind of came out of the woodwork after I first imported we first imported their wine last year, that they also make olive oil. So I twisted Davide and Laura's arm to give us some of the family stash of their organic extra virgin olive oil. So so we just got it in. So as with all of Febo's wines, also their olive oil is sold to businesses and consumers across the US. So, you know, so consumers can buy their wines and olive oils on verovinogusto.com, and distributors, wine stores, restaurants across the US. We always encourage you to reach out to us also on verovinogusto.com to inquire about getting your products in your state and in your store and restaurant. So I don't think we have other questions, and we don't have any questions in the chat. So I think we could probably close for now. I know Jenny said grazie mille. So so we appreciate you listening in all this whole time, because I know we went a little bit over time, but I think Maribeth, honestly, I think does a great job of explaining, and I learned a lot today. Found out some more, you know, a couple of more interesting stories about Davide and Laura. So thank you so much, Davide and Laura, for participating. We also have Gwendolyn listening in. So Gwendolyn is going to be on our next Faro Talk, which is on it's a Saturday one. It's at 1 p.m. New York time or Eastern time, 10 a.m. Pacific. And the theme is cork farming. So if you know anything about cork trees, you harvest them every 9 years. So we have a friend in Portugal who has a cork farm, and he's harvesting in the second half of June. So we're going to join him on his cork farm. So that'll be kind of a different theme. Hey, Gwendolyn, you're muted. She probably doesn't know that she's muted.
I'm unmuted. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things I visited Portugal in 2009 on a press trip and got to see the cork trees. And one of the things that I think ties in so well with Sheila's wines and everything is the importance of sustainability and the role of the cork forest. Because sometimes people think, oh, they're cork, it's killing the trees, and it's like, no. It's the cork forests are awesome, and they do a lot for the ecology of the area. They're super important. So we need to support wines that have corks in them.
Right.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much. And Davide and Laura, enjoy your day off tomorrow.
Grazie Sheila
Grazie.
e grazie Marybeth, grazie mille per come hai interpretato la nostra storia, l'hai fatto in modo perfetto, davvero sei entrata nel cuore della nostra famiglia.
Well, thank you for interpreting your family and your land through these wines. I know we can tell that it's a story from the heart, what you're doing here. And so I can't wait to keep following you through the next vintages to see how they change with the phases of the moon. So thank you.
Grazie.
Grazie,
Okay.
grazie mille.
Thank you. It was
Thanks,
great.
everyone. Bye.
Wow.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye bye.